I said get your dirty boots out of my lobby. Go wait outside like a dog. That's where your kind belongs.
Bradley Hargrove's voice cracked across the room like a whip. Every head turned. Every conversation stopped dead. He was pointing straight at a black man in worn overalls, a man who hadn't raised his voice, hadn't caused a scene, had simply walked in and sat down.
This is a multi-million-dollar office, not a barn. You're stinking up the place. Out!
The receptionist stared at her keyboard. Nobody moved. Nobody said a single word. And the black man in the overalls? He just stood there, breathing, still. Have you ever been thrown out of a room you were invited to? Yeah, something about that was building up. All right, here's what happened next. Let me take you back to the beginning. Before the shouting, before the humiliation, before any of it. 5 hours earlier, the sky over Macon, Georgia was still bruised purple. The sun hadn't cracked the horizon yet, but Franklin Owens was already awake. He stepped onto the porch of his farmhouse at exactly 4:45 in the morning, same time as every other day for the past 30 years. The screen door groaned behind him like an old friend complaining. Cool air hit his face, carrying the smell of wet Georgia clay and fresh-cut hay. Somewhere behind the barn, a rooster screamed its lungs out. Franklin didn't flinch. He just stood there, coffee in hand, watching the dark tree line slowly turn gold. The mug in his grip was chipped on the rim. Faded letters read, "World's Okayest Farmer." His daughter gave it to him 8 Christmases ago. He'd never used another mug since. Franklin was 58 years old, 6'2", hands like leather gloves from decades of working soil. He wore what he always wore, denim overalls, a flannel shirt soft from 1,000 washes, and steel-toe boots that hadn't been cleaned since the day he bought them. If you passed him on the road, you'd see a farmer, nothing more, nothing less. And that was exactly how he wanted it. Because what most people didn't know, what almost nobody in Macon knew, was that Franklin Owens was worth more than $22 million. Not from luck, not from inheritance, from 40 years of sweat, patience, and a mind sharper than most people in boardrooms twice his size. It started with 50 acres. His grandfather, Elijah Owens, was the son of a sharecropper who picked cotton until his fingers bled. Elijah spent 4 decades saving every dollar he could scrape together, skipped meals, patched the same pair of boots over and over. And in 1961, he bought 50 acres of red Georgia dirt with cash in a paper bag. The white clerk at the county office laughed in his face. Elijah didn't blink. He signed the deed, walked out, and never looked back. Franklin grew up on that land. He learned to plant before he learned to read, and when his grandfather died, Franklin didn't sell. He expanded. 50 acres became 100. 100 became 200. By the time he turned 50, Franklin owned 312 acres of prime agricultural land, one of the largest black-owned farms in the state. But farming was only half the story. 15 years ago, Franklin quietly partnered with a man named Terrence Williams to form Crestline Development Corporation. Terrence handled the corporate side, the suits, the handshakes, the conference rooms. Franklin handled the strategy, the land acquisitions, and the money. He was the majority shareholder, the silent engine behind a $90 million development firm. Forbes once featured him in a piece about black agricultural entrepreneurs. Franklin declined the photo. He didn't want the attention. He didn't need people to know. His wife, Denise, understood this better than anyone. She was a civil rights attorney with 23 years of experience, sharp tongue, sharper mind. She had seen the ugliest side of racial injustice in courtrooms across the South, and she carried that knowledge like armor. Today, Franklin had business in town. Crestline Development had its eye on a 125-acre commercial parcel called the Ridgecrest Corridor. Prime location, perfect for a mixed-use community project. The listing price sat at $4.8 million, and the listing broker was Pinnacle Realty Group, the biggest commercial real estate office in Macon. Franklin had scheduled the appointment a week ago. Confirmation email printed and tucked inside a manila folder, along with his proof of funds letter from First National Bank showing over $6 million in liquid assets. He finished his coffee, rinsed the mug, and climbed into Denise's sedan. His truck was in the shop. Denise offered to drive. She'd wait in the car while he handled the meeting. The drive into town took 40 minutes. Macon's downtown rose up slow. Old brick buildings, magnolia trees lining the sidewalks, church steeples poking through the canopy. Pinnacle Realty Group sat on the corner of Mulberry and 3rd in a renovated antebellum-style building. White columns out front, polished mahogany furniture visible through the windows. Portraits of past brokers hung along the lobby wall, every single one a white man. Franklin stepped out of the car. Red clay still clung to the soles of his boots. Hay dust peppered the shoulders of his flannel. He tucked the manila folder under his arm, kissed Denise on the cheek, and walked toward the front door. He had no idea what was waiting for him inside. The glass door swung open, and a wave of cold air hit Franklin's face. The lobby smelled like leather furniture and fresh-cut flowers. Soft jazz played from hidden speakers. The floor was marble, polished so clean, Franklin could see his own reflection in it. He walked to the reception desk. Behind it sat a blonde woman in her early 40s with a pearl necklace and a smile that vanished the second she looked up. Her name was Connie Hargrove. Her eyes traveled from Franklin's face to his overalls, down to his boots, then back up again. The smile didn't return. "Can I help you, sir?" she said. But the way she said "sir" had quotation marks around it. "Are you here for a delivery?" Franklin kept his voice steady. "No, ma'am. I have a 10 o'clock appointment with your commercial sales division regarding the Ridgecrest corridor parcel." Connie's eyebrows lifted like someone had told her a joke she didn't quite get. She looked down at her computer screen, clicked the mouse once, twice, scrolled slowly, too slowly. "I'm not seeing your name here," she said. She barely looked. "Franklin Owens," he said. Owens. The confirmation email was sent last Tuesday. Connie gave a tight little nod. No apology, no warmth. She pointed a manicured finger toward the far end of the lobby. "You can take a seat over there. Someone will be with you." Over there was a single chair tucked in the corner near the bathroom hallway, away from the main seating area, away from the coffee station, away from everything. Franklin didn't argue. He walked over, sat down, and placed the manila folder on his lap. And then he waited. 5 minutes passed. A white couple walked in, the man in khakis, the woman in a sundress. Connie lit up like a Christmas tree. "Good morning. Welcome to Pinnacle. Can I get y'all some coffee? Bradley will be right with you." Handshakes, laughter. They were escorted to a private office within 90 seconds. 10 minutes passed. A white man in a golf shirt strolled in. Same treatment. Warm greeting, fresh coffee, immediate attention. Franklin sat in his corner, invisible. 15 minutes passed. His appointment time came and went. No one approached him. No one offered him water. No one even looked in his direction. He might as well have been a piece of furniture. At 10:20, a door swung open at the back of the lobby, and Bradley Hargrove walked out. Bradley was 45, tall, tan from a week in Hilton Head. He wore a navy suit that cost more than most people's rent, gold watch, hair slicked back with precision. He moved through the office like he owned it, and in every way that mattered, he did. Top producing agent 6 years running, the man who brought in the money, the man nobody questioned. He spotted Franklin immediately. Bradley turned to Connie and tilted his head toward the corner. "Who's that?" Connie leaned forward and whispered something. Whatever she said, it made Bradley's jaw tighten. He looked at Franklin the way someone looks at a stain on their shirt. Then he walked over. He didn't extend his hand. He didn't introduce himself. He stopped about 4 feet away from Franklin, crossed his arms, and looked down at him. "Listen, buddy." His voice was loud, not whispering, not private, loud enough for every person in that lobby to hear every syllable. "I don't know who sent you in here, but we don't do rentals. And we definitely don't do walk-ins off the street. Franklin opened his mouth to speak. Bradley cut him off. You want to wait for someone? Fine. Go wait outside like the rest of the dogs. We've got real clients to serve in here. This ain't the place for you. The words hit the room like a slap. The white couple in the waiting area froze. The man in the golf shirt suddenly became very focused on his phone. Connie stared at her keyboard. A junior agent behind the glass partition, a young woman no older than 25, stopped mid-step, coffee cup in hand, mouth slightly open. Nobody spoke. The only sound was the soft jazz still playing from the speakers. Smooth saxophone over an ugly silence. Franklin stood up slowly. He rose to his full height, 6'2", broad shoulders, thick arms built by decades of physical work. He towered over Bradley by a good 3 inches, but he didn't step forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't clench his fists. He looked Bradley dead in the eye and said, very quietly, I have a 10 o'clock appointment. My name is Franklin Owens. I'm here about the Ridgecrest corridor listing. Bradley blinked. Then a grin spread across his face. Not a friendly grin. The kind of grin a man gives when he thinks he's about to deliver the funniest joke in the room. Ridgecrest? He let out a short laugh. That's a $4 million commercial lot, friend. Are you sure you're not looking for the Housing Authority office? That's 2 blocks south. They'll get you all set up. He winked. Actually winked, like he'd just done Franklin a favor. A forced chuckle came from somewhere in the lobby. Someone trying to stay on Bradley's good side. Frank didn't blink. He opened the manila folder and pulled out a single sheet of paper, the printed confirmation email from Pinnacle Realty's own system. Date, time, name, property listing number, all there in black and white. He held it up. This is my confirmation appointment, sent from this office, last Tuesday. Bradley glanced at the paper for maybe half a second. He didn't take it, didn't read it, just waved it off like Franklin was showing him a grocery receipt. Look, Bradley said, his voice dropping to that fake patient tone people use when they think they're talking to someone beneath them. I don't know how you got that, and frankly, I don't care. But I'm going to need you to step outside while I check with my manager. We can't have just anyone sitting in here making our clients uncomfortable. Making our clients uncomfortable. Let that phrase sit for a second. Franklin Owens, a man with $22 million to his name, a 312-acre farm, and a confirmation email in his hand, was making people uncomfortable. Not because of anything he said, not because of anything he did, because of what he looked like. His grip on the folder tightened. His knuckles pressed white against the manila paper. His breathing slowed. Deep in, slow out. His face stayed composed, but if you looked close enough, really close, you could see a muscle twitching in his jaw. Franklin lowered the paper. He looked at Bradley one more time, calm, steady, not a crack in his armor. I'll wait, he said. Right here. Bradley's face flushed red from the collar up. He wasn't used to hearing no. Not in his office. Not from someone who looked like Franklin. His nostrils flared. He muttered something under his breath, too low for most to hear, but the junior agent behind the glass caught it. Her eyes went wide. She looked away fast. Bradley turned on his heel and walked toward the back offices. His shoes clicked hard against the marble. Each step is louder than the last. Franklin sat back down. The manila folder returned to his lap. His eyes stayed forward. His breathing stayed even. But beneath the calm surface, something was building. A storm that Bradley Hargrove had no idea he'd just started. And outside in the parking lot, sitting in the driver's seat of a silver sedan, Denise Owens stared at her phone. One text message from Franklin. 3 words. It's happening again. Denise didn't panic. She didn't rush inside. She'd been through this before. Not with this office, but with other offices, other stores, other rooms where her husband's skin color arrived before his credentials did. She opened her phone's voice recording app. Then she called Franklin. He picked up on the first ring, didn't say hello, just answered, set the phone face down on the chair beside him, and let the call stay connected. The microphone picked up everything. The hum of the air conditioning, the soft jazz, the low murmur of the lobby, and whatever was about to happen next. 15 minutes crawled by. Franklin sat in that corner chair like a man carved from stone. Back straight, hands flat on the manila folder, eyes forward. He didn't fidget. He didn't check his phone. He didn't give anyone in that room a single reason to say he was causing trouble. But trouble was exactly what Bradley Hargrove was cooking up in the back office. When the door swung open again, Bradley wasn't alone. Walking beside him was Gerald Ashton, the managing broker and owner of Pinnacle Realty Group. Gerald was 60 years old, silver-haired, with the kind of face that looked permanently stuck between a smile and a grimace. He wore a blue blazer with a tiny American flag pin on the lapel. The kind of man who shook your hand at church on Sunday and forgot your name by Monday. Gerald had that look. The look of a man who didn't want to deal with this, who just wanted the problem to go away quietly so he could get back to his afternoon tea time. Bradley had clearly done the talking first. His version, his framing, his narrative. Gerald walked over to Franklin with his hands clasped in front of him, polite, practiced, the voice of a man who had smoothed over complaints before. "Sir, I'm Gerald Ashton. I manage this office. I understand there may have been some confusion about your visit today." "No confusion," Franklin said. "I have a confirmed appointment at 10 o'clock. I'm here to discuss the Ridgecrest corridor listing." Gerald nodded slowly, the kind of nod that means nothing. "I hear you, and I appreciate you coming down, but it seems like today's schedule is a bit backed up. Things are hectic around here. What I'd suggest is, why don't we reschedule? You can come back when things are a little less busy, and we'll make sure someone is available to sit down with you properly." Franklin looked past Gerald at the lobby behind him. Two agents were chatting by the coffee machine. One was scrolling her phone. A client was reading a magazine on the couch. The office was about as hectic as a library on a Tuesday afternoon. "It doesn't look busy to me," Franklin said. Gerald's smile tightened, a hairline crack in the performance. Franklin reached into his folder. He pulled out a second document, the proof of funds letter from First National Bank. Crisp white paper, bank letterhead, official seal. The numbers were right there in bold print. Liquid assets exceeding $6 million. He placed it on the reception counter, gently, like setting down a chess piece. "This is my proof of funds," Franklin said. "I'm prepared to make a cash offer on the Ridgecrest parcel. 4.8 million, no contingencies." Gerald glanced down at the letter. His eyes skimmed the numbers. For a split second, just a flash, something shifted behind his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or doubt. Then it was gone. Before Gerald could respond, Bradley stepped forward. He picked up the letter, held it at arm's length like it smelled bad, and let out a laugh. "Come on, Gerald. Anybody can print a fake bank letter. You can make these things on a laptop in 5 minutes. I've seen it before." He dropped the letter back on the counter. It slid across the marble and nearly fell off the edge. Franklin caught it. His fingers trembled, not from fear, from something much heavier than fear. He placed the letter back in his folder and said nothing. Bradley turned to Gerald with his arms spread wide. "Look, I've been patient here, but this man does not have an appointment. He does not have the means to purchase a $4 million property. And he is taking up space in a professional office where real transactions are happening." He turned back to Franklin. His voice dropped lower, harder. "I'm going to say this one more time. Leave, or I'm calling the police and reporting you for trespassing." Trespassing. That word changed everything in the room. It took a humiliation and turned it into a criminalization. One second, Franklin was a man being disrespected. The next, he was a man being threatened with arrest, in a building open to the public, with a confirmed appointment in his hand. Franklin looked at Gerald, searched his face for something, a pushback, a correction, a sign that someone in this building had a conscience. Gerald looked at the floor. He straightened his flag pin. He said nothing. Bradley pulled out his cell phone. He dialed 3 numbers, held the phone to his ear. his eyes locked on Franklin the entire time. Yes, I need to report a trespassing situation at Pinnacle Realty Group on Mulberry and 3rd. We have an individual who's refusing to leave the premises. He's been asked multiple times. He hung up, slid the phone back into his jacket pocket. Then he smiled at Franklin, a slow, satisfied smile. The smile of a man who believed he had already won. Police are on their way, Bradley said. So you can either walk out that door right now on your own 2 feet, or you can wait and let them drag you out. Your choice, friend. 8 minutes. That's how long it took for the patrol car to arrive. 8 minutes of Franklin sitting in that chair while Bradley leaned against the reception desk with his arms crossed, watching him like a security guard watching a shoplifter. Nobody in the lobby said a word. Not one person. The white couple from earlier had been escorted to a back office. The man in the golf shirt had left entirely. Connie typed at her keyboard with mechanical precision, eyes glued to the screen. The junior agent behind the glass had disappeared. Franklin was alone in that silence, surrounded by people, but completely alone. Then the front door opened. 2 officers stepped in, boots heavy on the marble, radios crackling with static, belts loaded with equipment, holsters, cuffs, flashlights. They filled the doorway like a wall. Bradley moved fast. He met them halfway across the lobby, voice low and urgent, hands gesturing, pointing at Franklin. That man right there refused to leave. No appointment. Harassing our clients. I asked him nicely 3 times. 3 times. Nicely. Franklin almost laughed. Almost. The officers approached. One was older, maybe mid-40s, with a weathered face and cautious eyes. The other was younger, early 30s, jaw tight, hand already resting near his belt. They stopped in front of Franklin's chair. "Sir," the older officer said, "we got a call about a trespassing situation. Can you tell us what's going on?" Franklin stood, slowly, hands visible at all times. He knew the rules. Every black man in America knows the rules. Move slow, speak clear, don't reach for anything they can't see. "My name is Franklin Owens. I have a 10 o'clock appointment with this office to discuss a commercial property listing. I have confirmation right here." He held up the folder. "I've been waiting for over 30 minutes. I've done nothing wrong." The younger officer shifted his weight. His eyes moved from Franklin's face to his overalls, down to the mud on his boots, back up again. The older officer took the confirmation email, read it carefully, looked at the date, the time, the Pinnacle Realty letterhead. His expression didn't change, but he held the paper a beat longer than necessary. "Okay," the older officer said, "but the business owner has asked you to leave the premises. Regardless of an appointment, if the property owner wants you off-site, we have to enforce that." Franklin stared at him. "So a man calls me a dog in front of a room full of people, refuses to honor my appointment, throws away my bank documents, and now I'm the one being removed?" The younger officer stepped forward. "Sir, I need you to lower your voice and step outside so we can sort this out." Franklin hadn't raised his voice, not once, not even slightly, but he knew how this worked. The accusation didn't need to be true, it just needed to be said. He walked toward the door. Each step felt like swallowing glass. Behind him, Bradley's voice rang out across the lobby, loud, confident, aimed at the remaining clients like a man delivering a punchline. "See? This is what happens when they wander out of their neighborhoods." The words hit Franklin's back like a blade between the shoulder blades. He stopped walking. Just for a second. His hand gripped the door handle so hard the metal groaned. Then he pushed through and stepped into the Georgia heat. And sitting in the silver sedan 30 feet away, Denise Owens pressed the phone tighter against her ear. The recording app showed 22 minutes and counting. Her eyes were dry. Her jaw was set. Her hands were steady. She had captured every single word. Outside the building, the officers positioned Franklin on the sidewalk like a suspect. They asked for his ID. He gave it. They asked if the proof of funds letter was real. He told them to call the bank. The younger officer radioed dispatch to run Franklin's name through the system, checking for warrants. On a man who had never been arrested, never had a speeding ticket, a man who paid more in property taxes than most people earned in a year. Franklin stood on that sidewalk with his folder under his arm while pedestrians walked past. Some stared. Some looked away fast. A black mother across the street pulled her child closer and quickened her pace. A white man in a business suit glanced over, smirked, and kept walking. The sun pressed down on Franklin's neck. Sweat gathered at his temples. The concrete radiated heat through the soles of his boots. He could feel the eyes. From the street, from the windows above, from the patrol car parked at the curb with its lights still flashing, painting red and blue streaks across the building's white columns. His grandfather's voice drifted through his memory. An old man sitting on a porch, shelling peas, saying the same thing he always said. The land don't care what color you are, boy. People do. That's why you gotta own the land. Because the land can't lie to you. The officers came back. No warrants, no record, no reason to hold him. The older officer handed back Franklin's ID and said, "You're free to go, Mr. Owens. I'd suggest you make your appointment through proper channels next time." Proper channels. Franklin had used proper channels. He had an email to prove it. He took his ID. He nodded. He didn't say thank you. He turned and walked toward the silver sedan. Franklin climbed into the passenger seat and pulled the door shut. The air conditioning hit his face. Denise didn't say a word at first. She just held up her phone. The recording app glowed on the screen. 26 minutes and 14 seconds. "I got every word," she said. Her voice was calm. The attorney is calm. The kind of calm that comes right before a storm makes landfall. The dog commented, the trespassing call, the neighborhood line, all of it, crystal clear. Franklin sat still for a long moment. His hands rested on the manila folder. His chest rose and fell. He stared through the windshield at the Pinnacle Realty building, those white columns, those polished windows, that portrait gallery of smiling white brokers. Then he spoke, quiet, measured, each word placed like a nail being driven into wood. "Call Terrence. Tell him to bring the Crestline paperwork. All of it. Every document. The corporate filings, the acquisition letters, the Forbes piece, everything." Denise picked up her phone. She didn't ask why. She already knew. Franklin looked at the building one more time. His eyes narrowed. The muscle in his jaw twitched once. They don't know who they just put outside. Nah. Y'all, they called the cops on this man. Ran his name for warrants. For what? For sitting in a chair with an appointment? I'm not gonna lie, I'm heated right now. But trust me, keep watching. Just keep watching. 45 minutes. That's how long Franklin and Denise sat in that silver sedan. Engine running, air conditioning humming. Denise made quiet, precise lawyer calls. Franklin stared at the building through the windshield, patient, still, like a man watching a trap he'd already set. Then a black Cadillac Escalade turned the corner onto Mulberry Street. The engine cut. The driver's door opened. Terrence Williams stepped out, 52 years old, clean shave, charcoal three-piece suit tailored so sharp it could draw blood, silver cufflinks, Italian leather shoes, a briefcase in his left hand that cost more than Bradley's monthly car payment. He looked like money. He looked like power. He looked like the kind of man Pinnacle Realty would trip over themselves to serve. Terrence walked straight through the front door. Connie Hargrove looked up, and this time her smile came fast and wide. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to Pinnacle. How can I help you?" Terrence Williams, CEO of Crestline Development Corporation. "I'm here about the Ridgecrest Corridor listing. Cash offer, $4.8 million. No contingencies." Connie's eyes went wide. She reached for the phone like it was on fire. "Let me get our senior broker right away. Can I get you coffee, water, anything?" 30 seconds. That's all it took for Connie to offer Terrence everything she never offered Franklin. Bradley appeared in under a minute, suit freshly buttoned, hand extended before he even crossed the lobby. "Mr. Williams, Bradley Hargrove, senior broker, Crestline Development. I've heard great things. Please, come on back." Gerald was right behind him, practically tripping over his own loafers. "Whatever you need, sir, we're at your service." Coffee appeared. Bottled water appeared. The Ridgecrest listing glowed on a flat screen in a dimmed conference room. The red carpet rolled out so fast it left skid marks. Terrence sat at the head of the table, opened his briefcase, laid out documents, let the silence build. Bradley and Gerald leaned forward, practically salivating. Then Terrence closed his briefcase, folded his hands. "Before we move forward, I'd like to bring in my business partner. He's the majority shareholder of Crestline Development. He makes the final decision on all acquisitions." Bradley nodded eagerly. "Of course, bring him in." Terrence walked to the door, opened it, and gestured toward the lobby. Franklin Owens walked in. Same overalls, same flannel, same boots with red clay caked into the treads, same manila folder, the same man Bradley had called a dog 2 hours ago. The room collapsed into silence. Bradley's smile melted off his face like wax down a candle. His mouth hung open. His hand gripped the table edge until his knuckles turned white. Every drop of color drained from his skin. Gerald stopped breathing. His eyes darted between Franklin and Terrence, trying to compute something his brain refused to accept. Terrence spoke like a judge reading a verdict. "Gentlemen, Franklin Owens, founder and majority owner of Crestline Development Corporation, 312 acres adjacent to the Ridgecrest parcel. Net worth north of $22 million per last year's Forbes profile." Pause. Every syllable settling into the walls. "He is the man you threw out of this building 2 hours ago." Franklin sat down, opened the manila folder. Inside, the appointment confirmation, the proof of funds letter, and a printed transcript of every word Bradley had said, pulled from 26 minutes of recorded audio. He looked at Bradley, not with rage, not with triumph, with something worse. Absolute calm. "You told me to wait outside like a dog. You called police on a man with a confirmed appointment and $6 million in liquid assets. You told your clients, and I quote, 'This is what happens when they wander out of their neighborhoods.'" Bradley's lips moved. No sound came out. Frank closed the folder, stood up. "Crestline Development will not be purchasing the Ridgecrest corridor through Pinnacle Realty. Not today, not next month, not ever." He looked at Gerald. "And I will be speaking with every landowner, developer, and investor in this county about what happened here today." Gerald's voice cracked. "Mr. Owens, please, there's been a terrible misunderstanding." "There was no misunderstanding," Franklin said. "Your man knew exactly what he was doing, and you stood right there and let it happen." Franklin walked out. Terrence followed. Neither looked back. The conference room door clicked shut. Small, quiet, final. Outside, Denise leaned against a sedan with her phone in one hand and a legal pad in the other. She had already called the local NAACP chapter, already contacted a civil rights litigation firm in Atlanta, already started a conversation with a reporter at the local NBC affiliate. The $4.8 million deal, the largest listing Pinnacle had all year, was dead, and the fallout hadn't even started. The conference room door had barely stopped vibrating before Gerald Ashton erupted. He didn't yell at first. He paced, back and forth across the conference room like a caged animal. His hands shook. His face cycled through colors, red, white, red again. The American flag pin on his lapel caught the overhead light with every turn. Then he stopped, turned to Bradley, and let loose. "Do you have any idea what you just cost this office?" His voice bounced off the glass walls. The junior agents in the hallway froze. Connie flinched at her desk. $4.8 million, Bradley. 4.8. The biggest listing we've had all year. Gone. Dead. Because you couldn't keep your mouth shut for 5 minutes. Bradley stood with his back against the wall, arms crossed, jaw tight. He was already building his defense. You could see it forming behind his eyes like clouds before a storm. "How was I supposed to know?" he said. "The guy walked in looking like he just fell off a tractor. No suit, no briefcase, mud on his boots. You telling me that looked like a $4 million buyer to you?" Gerald stepped closer, close enough that Bradley could smell the coffee on his breath. "Looking like what, Bradley? Finish that sentence. Go ahead. Say it out loud. Say exactly what you mean." Bradley's mouth opened, then closed. His eyes dropped to the floor. For the first time all day, he had nothing to say. Gerald turned to Connie. She sat frozen at the reception desk, mascara threatening to run, tissues clutched in both hands. "And you," Gerald said, "you sat right there. You heard everything. You watched him treat that man like garbage, and what did you do? Nothing. You smiled at the white clients and pretended the black man in the corner didn't exist." Connie's voice broke. I didn't do anything wrong. I just..." "Exactly." Gerald slammed his palm on the counter. The flower vase rattled. "You didn't do anything. That's the problem. That's the whole damn problem." Gerald pulled out his phone, dialed the firm's attorney. His words were short and sharp. "We have a situation. Potential civil rights violation. Racial discrimination. On site. Today. I need you here within the hour." He hung up and pointed at Bradley. "You're suspended. Effective immediately. Turning your keys, your parking pass, and your client files. Don't come back to this office until you hear from legal." Bradley's face twisted. "Suspended? Are you serious? Gerald, I've been your top producer for 6 years. 6 years. I built half the revenue in this office. You're going to throw that away over some..." "Choose your next word very carefully," Gerald said. Bradley shut his mouth. He stared at Gerald for a long moment. Then he yanked his keys from his pocket, threw them on the counter hard enough to scratch the marble, and stormed toward the door. He didn't make it 3 steps before Gerald's voice caught him. "One more thing. If you talk to the press, if you post anything online, if you so much as whisper about this to anyone before legal clears it, you're not just suspended, you're done. Permanently." Bradley shoved through the glass door and disappeared into the parking lot. His car engine roared to life. Tires screeched against asphalt. Then, silence. Back inside, the office felt like a crime scene. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The soft jazz still played from the speakers, absurdly cheerful against the wreckage. That evening, the damage went public. Denise Owens, in her capacity as an attorney and with Franklin's written consent, filed a formal complaint with the Georgia Real Estate Commission. The complaint included the 26-minute audio recording, the appointment confirmation email, the proof of funds letter, and a detailed written account of every incident from the moment Franklin walked through the door. She also hand-delivered a copy of the recording to Nathan Cross, an investigative reporter at the local NBC affiliate. Nathan had covered housing discrimination stories before. He knew exactly what he was holding. The segment aired on the 6 o'clock news that same evening. Bradley Hargrove's voice filled living rooms across Macon County, crystal clear, unmistakable. "Go wait outside like the rest of the dogs." Then the second clip. "This is what happens when they wander out of their neighborhoods." The anchor cut to Franklin's interview. He sat in a plain chair, wearing a clean button-down shirt. His voice was calm. His eyes were steady. He didn't raise his voice once. "I wasn't angry for myself," Franklin said. "I was angry because I know this happens to people every day who don't have a $22 million company behind them. People who get treated like that and have no recording, no lawyer, no way to fight back. That's who I'm angry for." The segment ended. Social media ignited within the hour. The audio clip spread like wildfire. Local Facebook groups exploded. Twitter picked it up, then Reddit, then Instagram. By midnight, the hashtag dog comment was trending across Georgia, and Bradley Hargrove, suspended, alone in his living room, Made the mistake of releasing a statement through a hastily hired PR consultant. My comments were taken out of context. I treat all clients with equal respect, regardless of background. This is a misunderstanding that has been blown out of proportion. The internet tore it apart in minutes. Users dug through Bradley's social media history like archaeologists. They found old posts with racial jokes barely disguised as humor. A photo at a cookout standing next to a Confederate flag with a beer raised high. A comment mocking Black History Month, calling it a waste of a perfectly good February. Screenshot after screenshot surfaced, each one worse than the last. Each one proving that the lobby incident wasn't a mistake, it was a pattern. Bradley's defense crumbled in under 24 hours, and the worst was still coming. 3 days after the news segment aired, the Georgia Real Estate Commission opened a formal investigation into Bradley Hargrove and Pinnacle Realty Group. 2 days later, HUD, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, launched a parallel federal inquiry into potential Fair Housing Act violations. Investigators arrived at Pinnacle on a Tuesday morning, unannounced. 2 state agents, 1 federal compliance officer. They walked through the same glass door Franklin had walked through. Connie Hargrove watched them pass with a face white as printer paper. They interviewed everyone. Junior agents, clients who witnessed the confrontation, the 2 officers who responded to the trespassing call. Every account matched Franklin's version. Not one person contradicted the recording. But the investigation went deeper. During discovery, investigators subpoenaed Pinnacle's internal complaint records going back 5 years. What they found turned a bad situation into a catastrophe. 3 previous complaints, all filed against Bradley Hargrove by clients of color. A Black couple told a listed property was no longer available, only to see it sold to a white buyer 2 weeks later at the same price. A Latino business owner whose calls Bradley stopped returning after their first meeting. A Black veteran told in front of staff that he probably couldn't afford anything north of the bypass. 3 complaints, all documented, all buried, marked resolved, no action required. Signed off by 1 person, Gerald Ashton. He had read each one, acknowledged the pattern, and done nothing because Bradley brought in too much revenue. Money over morality, every single time. Gerald's name was added to the case file. 6 weeks later, Owens versus Hargrove and Pinnacle Realty Group, U.S. District Court, Middle District of Georgia. Charges: Fair Housing Act violations, intentional racial discrimination, emotional distress, defamation. Judge Patricia Moore presiding, 63 years old, silver reading glasses, 0 tolerance for theatrics. The prosecution opened with the recording. 26 minutes played through courtroom speakers. The jury, 8 women, 4 men, sat frozen as Bradley's voice filled the room. Go wait outside like the rest of the dogs. A juror in the second row closed her eyes. A man in the back shook his head. This is what happens when they wander out of their neighborhoods. 4 seconds of silence after the recording ended. Judge Moore removed her glasses, cleaned them, put them back on. Bradley took the stand on day 3. His attorney coached him. Stay calm, show remorse, say misunderstanding often. It collapsed in 11 minutes. Under cross-examination, Bradley contradicted himself 3 times. He claimed he never saw the appointment confirmation. The prosecution showed email logs proving Connie flagged Franklin's name that morning. He called the dog comment a figure of speech not directed at anyone. The prosecutor replayed the audio of him pointing directly at Franklin. He claimed Franklin was acting aggressive. 6 witnesses testified Franklin never raised his voice once. His credibility disintegrated on the stand. His attorney requested a recess. Denied. Then Franklin testified. Dark suit, hands folded, voice low and steady. No performance, no drama, just the truth. He talked about his grandfather, Elijah, a sharecropper's son who saved 40 years to buy 50 acres with cash in a paper bag. He talked about what that land meant, not as investment, but as proof that a black man could own something permanent in a country that spent centuries saying he couldn't. He talked about walking into Pinnacle with a confirmed appointment and a bank letter, and being told to wait outside like a dog. His voice cracked once. I wasn't hurt for myself. I've been called worse. I was hurt thinking about every black man and woman who walks into a place like that without a recording, without a lawyer, without $22 million to make people suddenly care. What happens to them? The jury deliberated 3 hours and 42 minutes. Guilty. All counts. Judge Moore read the penalties without expression. Bradley Hargrove, real estate license permanently revoked. $850,000 in damages to Franklin Owens. 500 hours of community service with civil rights organizations. Permanently barred from real estate in Georgia. Bradley sat motionless as each sentence landed, staring at the table like a man watching his life slide off the edge. Pinnacle Realty Group, fined $1.2 million by HUD. Mandatory anti-discrimination training across all operations. Gerald Ashton was forced to resign immediately. License suspended pending review. The 2 responding officers received formal reprimands. 40 hours of bias training required. The Macon Police Department issued a public statement acknowledging procedural failures. The national media carried the verdict that afternoon. CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times the following week. One headline spread everywhere. The farmer they called a dog now owns the block. Franklin issued one statement through Denise. No interviews, no cameras, just words on paper. This was never about revenge. It was about making sure the next person who walks through that door gets treated like a human being. Within 3 months, Franklin purchased the Ridgecrest Corridor through a different brokerage at a lower price. Pinnacle scandal had made the listing toxic. Crestline broke ground on a mixed-use project, affordable housing, a commercial district creating over 200 jobs, and a community center named the Elijah Owens Center, after his grandfather. Pinnacle Realty never recovered. Clients fled, agents resigned. 18 months after the verdict, Gerald locked the Mulberry Street office for the last time. The portraits came off the walls. The leather couches were sold at auction. The building sat empty. And Bradley Hargrove was spotted working a register at a hardware store on the edge of town. His name, when searched online, returned one result above all others. Same headline, same story, same recording. It would follow him for the rest of his life. Early morning, same porch, same screen door groaning like an old friend. Same chipped coffee mug, world's okayest farmer, warm between calloused hands. Franklin stood where he always stood, watching the sky turn from bruised purple to soft gold over his 312 acres. Roosters screaming behind the barn, wind carrying the smell of wet clay and fresh hay. Everything is the same as it had been for 30 years, except now, across the road, construction cranes rose against the horizon like steel arms reaching for the sky. Concrete foundations stretched across the Ridgecrest Corridor. Trucks rumbled in and out along freshly paved access roads. The skeleton of the Elijah Owens Community Center was already taking shape, red brick walls climbing higher every week. Denise stepped onto the porch. She didn't say anything, just stood beside him, shoulder to shoulder, coffee in her own hand. They watched the sunrise together in the kind of silence that doesn't need filling. The kind of silence 2 people earn after 40 years of marriage and a fight that nearly broke them both. Franklin took a long sip, set the mug on the railing, walked inside. He stopped in front of the mantel. A framed photograph sat in the center, black and white, edges faded, corners soft from decades of handling. His grandfather, Elijah Owens, standing on the original 50 acres the day the deed was signed, 1961, thin as a rail, hands rough as sandpaper, wearing the only suit he ever owned, and smiling like a man who had just proven the whole world wrong. Franklin touched the frame with his fingertips, gentle, like touching something sacred. "We kept the land, Pop," he whispered, "and then some." He stood there for a long moment. Then he straightened his back, picked up his coffee, and walked back out to start his day. Same as always. Same boots, same overalls, same quiet dignity that no amount of money could buy and no amount of hatred could take away. Because Franklin Owens didn't do what he did for revenge. He didn't do it for headlines. He didn't do it for the $850,000 or the satisfaction of watching Bradley Hargrove scan hardware at $9 an hour. He did it because silence is what allows men like Bradley to thrive. Silence from the receptionist who looked away. Silence from the clients who studied their phones. Silence from the manager who buried 3 complaints because the numbers looked good. Every person who saw something wrong and said nothing. They were bricks in the wall that Bradley hid behind. Franklin removed a brick. That's all. 1 brick, and the whole wall came down. Racism in real estate is not a relic of the past. It's not a chapter in a history textbook. It is documented in HUD complaints filed every single year, in DOJ investigations that expose patterns of discrimination in lending, listing, and service, in audit studies where black buyers are shown fewer homes, quoted higher rates, and treated with less respect than white buyers with identical qualifications. It is happening right now, today, in offices with polished marble floors and soft jazz and fresh-cut flowers. Behind smiles that disappear the moment the wrong skin color walks through the door. Franklin's story changed 1 office, 1 corner of 1 town in Georgia. But there are 1,000 Pinnacle realtors out there, 10,000 Bradley Hargroves, and most of them will never face a recording, a courtroom, or a headline, unless someone speaks up. Look, yeah, the story I just told, that part's made up. Franklin, not real. But what he went through, man, that humiliation, people making assumptions, cops showing up just 'cause a black man sat in a chair, yeah, that's not fiction. That happens all the time. And most of the time, nobody's filming it.